2-sentence horror stories.
"I'm sorry. You're just not my type," she said. Recovering in the burn unit, she wished she had said yes. "I made the wrong choice when a man broke into my house at night and forced me to choose who would die between me and my daughter. Now I can't do anything because I'm a ghost. And all I can do is watch him do horrible things to her, right next to my body, stabbed, bloody and dead." After a horrible car accident, my previously comatose daughter worked hard to write the answers to the doctor's questions, squinting through her bandages. I was so proud, at least until the doctor asked her name, and she wrote the name of her best friend who had been buried a week prior. I tucked my child into bed, and as I turned to leave, they said, "Daddy, I think there is someone in my closet." When I opened the door to check, I only found an empty closet and a note pinned to the inside, written in my handwriting, "She isn't real." The genie said I could wish back 4 people, so I chose my father, grandfather, the man who shot JFK, and the man who drowned my hated baby brother. "I said 4 people," said the genie. "Pick 3 more." I jokingly gave the man my PayPal after he told me he would give $1 million if I could survive a year in the last video game I played without respawn. Drenched in my own blood, $1 million richer, I realize I should have listened to my parents when they told me not to play such violent and horrific games. They say you only die when you're forgotten. I lie in my coffin as I have for the last 1,000 years, waiting for the sweet release of death. I wish I had never cured cancer. The only guilt the woman had was that she was going to leave her son in a world full of monsters, like those who were filming her. "Jump," her son commented on the grainy live stream of a woman standing on the guardrail of a bridge. "Help me! I'm trapped!" cried the little girl through the freshly uncovered gaps in the rubble. "Fuck that!" yelped the archaeologist as he hurriedly placed back the ancient tombstones. The fortune teller said that drinking would be the end of me, so I focused on my health and quit alcohol forever. But just before I went under for a routine operation, I could smell the liquor on the anesthesiologist's breath as he asked me to count backwards from 10. Being a young single dad, it took me 2 years to save enough money to take my 5-year-old daughter to Disney World. Once we entered the Magic Kingdom, I let her run free and smiled as my financial problems disappeared with her. The fortune teller said that drinking would be the end of me, so I focused on my health and quit alcohol forever. But just before he put me under for a routine operation, I could smell the liquor on the anesthesiologist's breath as he asked me to count backwards from 10. The creepy guy across from me on the train hasn't stopped staring, so I pull out my phone to secretly take a photo, just in case. My guts sink in panic when my phone's torch flashes into his eyes, until I realize his pupils never contracted in the sudden bright light. Live 1 year without your greatest talent, and you get $1 billion, was a deal I could not pass on, so I accepted it. I can't breathe. After my tank ran out of oxygen, I swam as fast as I could, desperate to reach the surface. But as my hands crashed against the sand, I immediately understood that in the darkness of the sea, I didn't realize which direction was up. They call me a monster. My family shun me. I'm unemployed, and there is no hope left for me. One sleep-deprived shake when it wouldn't stop crying, and my life is worthless now. I read my daughter a picture book that described royalty as having blue blood. The last words she whispered before passing out in the ambulance were, "I just wanted to see if I really was a princess like you and Daddy told me." Knowing how easily a wish can backfire, the wise young man simply asked the genie for more self-control. After 30 straight hours of manual breathing, the wise young man hanged himself. When you were put under for brain surgery, you were so relieved that you'd finally get rid of this parasite after who knows how long. From the inside of a small jar, you awake to see your own body looking at the doctors with the eyes of a scared child. After 5 years of tireless work, my thesis is finally finished. University checker says 90% AI. I wrote every word. I like to call myself a survivor, someone who is not a victim, but a survivor of traumatic events. After all, what better way to gain the trust of other vulnerable victims, ripe for the picking? "Aren't you going to call the cops?" the burglar asked. "Why, no one knows you're here," he said with a smirk. "Here you go, your potion of youth," says the wizard, as he hands me the unlabeled flask. "Thank you very much," I say my last words, before guzzling the whole flask full of that potion of youth. I absently munched on the carrot sticks my infant gleefully stuck into my mouth at dinner. The crunch was the exact same as my little boy began to scream, and a coppery taste filled my mouth. Though I kicked him out a week ago, my boyfriend stands outside my window with a boombox every night. The sound attracts more undead every night, but I can't bring myself to take the shot. "Hey, Dad, I ran into one of our regular customers today, and he was asking when you're going to open the store again. He said your deli sandwiches are so addictive that he felt like he was going through withdrawal without them. He was even shaking like an addict." "Remember to do that thing I like," Sarah giggled playfully, adjusting the camera as her husband excitedly took off his pants. As Sarah began to film from the corner of the dank, dark basement, the woman bound and gagged on the table began to scream. Following a loud thud, my coworker barged into the room in a panic. "The window is cracking," he said, "and we don't have enough time to surface." When you were put under for brain surgery, you were so relieved that you'd finally get rid of this parasite after who knows how long. From the inside of a small jar, you awake to see your own body looking at the doctors with the eyes of a scared child. After 5 years of tireless work, my thesis is finally finished. University checker says 90% AI. I wrote every word. The gods laughed at the curse they cast upon the young woman, that anything she proclaimed would be scorned, rejected, and not believed. Their laughter died along with their strength, as she made a proclamation, which spread far and wide. The gods are all-knowing. We must love and worship them. When I gained the ability to stop time without ever aging, I did so immediately for a year, filling out every desire to my heart's content. I was confused why so many were cold to me when I began time again, until, one by one, they recounted watching all the things I did when they were frozen. To who? How many times? When I asked my dad why he didn't want to give me a brother or sister, he told me the emperor only allowed one child per family, leaving me feeling lonely at times. However, I always looked forward to visiting my family's grave, where I could sit and bring food offerings, expressing gratitude to my mom for the life I have, while imagining what my 5 older sisters may have looked like. My doll broke again, and I cried when Mommy took it to throw it away. She says one of Daddy's slave women is almost due, and I'm going to have a brand new doll very soon. My boyfriend just showed me his favorite movie. I don't remember him filming it. When I woke up in the hospital, everyone assured me that I was fine and mostly came away with scrapes and bruises. When I asked about my daughter, who had been sitting in the back seat, no one was willing to meet my gaze. Tara frantically rummaged through the dumpster's foul, decaying trash, tears streaming down her face as she whispered,
"I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did this. I'm so sorry."
when the raspy voice of an old woman sounded behind her.
"What you're searching for is long gone,"
She said, with a nearly toothless grin.
"but you're welcome to join us in the circle for dinner since you provided the meat."
A dying man pushed something into my hands. He told me I must use it. I'm sure, one day when it's most important, I'll find a use for this EpiPen. Every morning my wife gives me a bowl of cat food, and if I don't eat, she shoves my head in it and chases me outside with a brush. I should have never said, I wish my wife treated me half as good as she treated that cat while holding that lamp. Being a twin was great until adulthood, when my sister surpassed me in every way imaginable. But I won in the end. When I walked into her home, and her husband and kids greeted me, never knowing she was even gone. After a solid month of our daughter crying about a monster peering in through her bedroom window, my husband had the idea of making a trap. His name was Kenneth Smith. He lived down the street from us for years. After my toddler ingested the whole bottle of pills, I called poison control and quickly read off the ingredients listed on the label. "Transferring you to the coroner's office," said the voice on the line. As the stranger made Mommy scream and cry, the bright 4-year-old picked up the phone and dialed 911. "You're one of Elmo's best friends," the toy phone replied. "You're stuck in a room with a robot algorithm whose only goal is to generate noise, and you are hoping and pleading that it doesn't figure out that pain makes humans scream." When the woman saw that the bonnet the midwife placed on her newborn's tiny little head was not blue, she wept, for she knew that it meant that in about a year or so, she would be a new mother for the 5th time. "You get any 3 wishes you desire," the genie whispered in my ear. I whispered back, "I'd like to make cancer contagious." When my torturers chained me flat to the ground over a patch of bare dirt, I thought they were leaving me to starve to death. It wasn't until the first pointed shoot pierced my stomach that I realized I'd been chained over a patch of freshly planted bamboo. It's been 4 days, and that damn clock my grandfather gave me hasn't stopped ticking my ears off. I'm too afraid to even turn it off. Every time I start to walk closer, it ticks faster and faster. There's a kind of flower, recognizable for its red petals and teardrop-like stamen, that only grows over dead bodies. I always wondered why the rent was so low when the garden was so lush and beautiful. As they soaked my legs in salt water, I thought this isn't a very effective way to torture someone. Until they brought in the goat. When I was a kid, I wished I could have 9 lives. It wasn't until 12 years later, when I put a gun in my mouth, that I realized it came true. My wife came into the kitchen while I was eating, asking where I had buried her recent miscarriage. I pointed to the garden, silently thanking God I had covered my plate with a napkin. I never knew why, but the zombies all remembered things like their last words. My boyfriend's walking corpse has stayed pressed into the chain link for days, rasping at me. "We shouldn't have come." I've been stuck in this broken elevator for only a few hours, but I've already given up pleading for help. No one could hear me over the screaming outside, and I'm more worried about the viscous, rusty sludge oozing through the elevator doors. This harvest looks like it's going to be unusually large. I concur. 8.2 billion must be a new record for a single planet. "Please, God, don't let it look in the closet," I silently prayed. "Please, God, don't let it look in the closet," it parroted back from the next room. My boyfriend is always so sweet when I'm throwing up. Even though he says I look disgusting as he hands me the toothbrush, he reminds me that I'll be beautiful once I've lost all that weight. My cell phone connected to the Bluetooth in my car automatically, so the cop who'd pulled me over heard every word. "Ma'am, I'm not seeing any officers on duty anywhere along the I-90, the 911 dispatcher whispered. "You took LSD decades ago and had a great trip followed by a fantastic life. Suddenly, you are 14 years old again and waking up on the floor of your mom's house." My sister was jealous over a guy she likes liking me, so I offered a ritual to switch bodies with her tonight. Stirring my drink amused, I observe as he carried her by the shoulder, into his car, and hopefully a place where I won't see her again. Ever since my dog was a puppy, we loved playing hide and seek. He would always find me with a simple call, "Here, boy," no matter where I was. But now, trapped at the bottom of this well, hungry and desperate, I kinda regret teaching him the game. Here, boy. The CDC has just released the 4 scariest words mankind has ever heard. Rabies has gone airborne. Hello, I know this is awkward, but you're my biological mother through my parents' in vitro fertilization. I stared in shock at the young woman who looked so strikingly like me, because I don't remember ever having been an egg donor. Why are you doing this to me? I screamed when they ripped out another nail. Leaning in close, my torturer grinned and whispered, knowing there is a reason, but not what that reason is half the fun. I knew something was wrong about 20 minutes after finishing my drink, so I sought out my friend in the crowded club and pleaded for him to get me home safely. As I sat slumped in the back of the cab, my eyes heavy and his hand under my skirt, I realized he was not my friend. After pointing the gun at my son's head, the man with the mask asked if I wanted him to live or die, and I made the wrong choice. It's been 20 years since he took him from me, and he still sends me horrific images of the tortures he likes to put my son through. I held my crying son over the cliff, praying my arms wouldn't give out as I watched the other weeping parents let go of their children one by one. The soldiers with the guns sit behind us and keep laughing as they repeat, "The one who lasts the longest gets to keep their brat." "What is that?" my shaky voice whispered as I stared at the blob on the ultrasound of my young daughter's brain. The doctor was pale as she answered, "That's her sister." I thanked the barista at Starbucks as she handed me my coffee with my name written on the cup. It wasn't until I left the store that I remembered I hadn't told her my name. Scientists announced today that the search for life beyond Earth is officially over. They've confirmed, without a doubt, that we are utterly alone in the entire universe. After 3 boys, you must be desperate for a girl this time, people joked to me throughout my pregnancy. As the baby gave its first cry, the midwife read the question in my eyes and shook her head sadly as she turned towards the incinerator. "I know you can't sleep," I told my excited kids at 1 a.m. on Christmas morning, "but Santa will still bring you everything you asked for if you just lie still and quiet." "Thank God they still believe," my husband whispered to me as we listened to the heavy footsteps moving through the house. "We are a natural breeding center. Therefore, we don't allow any of the chemicals they used to use as it may hurt the pups." Despite the screaming in the background, I was relieved that my new pet human would be natural and pure. "This won't be the last time we make love, I swear to you," he whispers, while hastily zipping up his pants. The door shuts, and I am once again alone in the darkness of the cooler. Throw a coin down a well, and you should only hear silence. Throw a person down a well, and you definitely shouldn't hear it ask for a second one. By remembering him, we keep him alive, my wife told our son. Now I wish they would forget me, so my spirit can finally be free to move into the afterlife. "I'm sorry, your baby passed away, but here's your money. I had a really good time though." "Suicide is never the answer. Just, please, put down the knife and..." "Who the hell said anything about suicide?" "Remember, we are very lucky that we could afford to move, and I promise you will make new friends." My mother's words meant nothing as I stared out the window of the space capsule, watching Earth light up with nuclear explosions. My son was mute ever since housebreakers killed his sister in front of him. My blood ran cold as he screamed when the judge entered the courtroom. I had a miscarriage, and my father comforted me with a cold, "Everything happens for a reason." Years later, as he begged for my kidney, I leaned in close and whispered back, "Everything happens for a reason." The warlock was powerful, but not so powerful as to not die of old age. The castle filled out with cries as the brains of every mind-controlled slave returned to the moment just before being slaved. I got the call that my wife had given birth. When I arrived, the doctor could not stop apologizing. "I do that because I love her. You'll do it too once you grow up," I gently explained to my 6-year-old, standing in the corner of the room after bearing witness to me beating his mother. I was stunned to see a 3 a.m. text from my brother, who hadn't called since leaving to run some kind of military silo in the Midwest years ago. I furrowed my brow in confusion as I read and reread the text. "Get out of the city now. Ronnie, I love you, my bro, forever." The prophet had warned that her daughter would kill her. She assumed it would happen in childbirth. Yet here she was, healthy, cradling a baby girl with eyes full of innocence and wonder. When my wife succumbed to an incurable illness, I donated her body to science so she could help save mankind. My only worry now is how they will stop it before the population drops too far. It was a simple deal. I would receive $50 billion in exchange for my bloodline ending. It was only when the world grew suddenly silent that I remembered. If you go far enough back, the whole human race is one family.